Yeah, I actually put a link that is.
I don't know. This is what you did last time.
Yeah, it seems
Run through it just to give some examples. I didn't want to take too long for my speech.
So it says live.
But I actually found a whole Linux Journal article where I actually basically took the first like third of the article and just did right there.
Well, I'm out of ideas. We should ask James.
Like how weird. And,
Hey, do you know why this live stream is
name types to like solve race conditions and do all sorts of weird stuff.
Okay.
Which was actually fascinating.
Oh yeah, there's like
if you want to read more about it, I actually provided a link to the actual person who knew about it.
I think we're good to go whenever you want to start.
Yeah.
So I'm just getting
Yeah, no
use
rush.
Xrandar again.
Xrandar and a Mac.
Oh, I'm running Linux.
Oh, nice.
It took me 20 minutes to figure out that the HDMI cable is directional. Yeah. Because there's an amplifier in one end.
You guys an extra long cable, right?
I guess.
So it's also a Linux install night,
I guess
right?
this is why Apple's
Did
so
anyone
successful.
bring CDs or some other easy way?
It makes stuff easy to use.
Is it easy
No,
to
I'm not like being a hater.
like
I'm just like, wow.
install
It's really
or like
hard.
uninstall OS X and install?
I've never done it before. Apparently it's hardly easy.
For sure.
Okay.
Oh,
That's just been my personal experience.
Okay, it's live now.
Okay.
Because you're gonna get an update and then like the Wi-Fi is gonna stop working.
Okay, fuck. I kind of locked myself in. Fuck.
But it's easy though because like it's just the non-standard bootloader is used by Apple products, EFI, instead of like just drug compatible booting. So you have to use an EFI, like for EFI programs to boot them. Usually not standard.
I've heard on Mac that also like sometimes software updates would patch the bootloader.
Yeah, maybe I don't even know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I had like almost no experience with it just a couple of times. I've installed some old Mac, not even the Pros, so like it's a bit. But it's like it's similar. And there's good tutorials online. People use it pretty often.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be a pain in the ass.
That would be a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
The TLDR is like you go in the Mac side and you just like, edit a couple of files through the bootloader, and then once you've done that, you basically configure, you install Linux pretty much the normal way. Just you have to install this program called Refined or a similar one.
Okay.
EFI, ND, Refined. Yeah, you know this crap. Yeah. You know they use a name. Like, blah blah blah. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you install that, then when you boot up the operating system, there's like beautiful icons, like little Linux Penguin or the Mac Apple or the Mac.
Oh, nice.
And you just select, you look at
Okay.
That's definitely the best way.
He was saying some shit about like Wi-Fi stopped working when the update comes. Is that?
You mean for the Apple or the MacBook?
Yeah, because the Apple hardware is a little like.
Yeah, I have this whole.
I kind of imagine you making. It takes a little bit of massaging to get it to work. Especially if you've got the one that does the video.
Well, I kind of do because it goes every hour, so it's like a nice like little
discrete
time to meditate.
graphics.
Dude, yeah, that's something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's called
that's
Gradients
also
of
clean
World
to
out
figure
here.
out.
I got a 2011 MacBook Pro off Craigslist, and I didn't know it. I just looked at it, like, looked at it, the file system, and it looked fine. But apparently, these have like soldering issues like, on the hardware side, and so I had to do some. I don't even know what the fuck I had to do with like discrete graphics. I don't even know what discrete graphics are, but I had to do some toggling of it to get like my computer back. Like it was just like flashing and fucked up, like gnarly pixelated.
I don't know why it's flickering, but it's like different resolutions.
That's awesome.
Change that.
Cool. Yeah, that's fine. Are we?
Yeah, really, are we live?
Is it
We are
recording?
live.
Oh, have we been live the whole time?
Yes, I apologize. So, it's like a very candid moment. They're getting to know us as people.
I feel like
We're
the
not
camera
just
sees
like
my soul.
wizards, so.
Hi everyone. Hey there. My name's Steven, and I want to talk to you today about a very powerful CyberWizard tool known as Markdown. It is actually a well-known fact that every CyberWizard, in fact, does quite a bit of writing. And that writing tends to come in the form of spells or, potion recipes, programs, modules. And that's great if you're talking to, a computer, but what happens when you're talking to your fellow wizards? They don't speak the same language. So you can have like chat and email and IRC, and these are all great powerful tools for talking in the present, but what about the future? Like, how do you communicate your ideas and thoughts about a particular program or module you created to others? Or even just communicating, other non-code related ideas. Spells are very cryptic, so they need to be documented so that other people can understand them. Plain text works for this to some degree, but an important thing is that since most CyberWizards work in both the terminal and the browser, something is needed that plays well in both of these environments. So, Markdown. It's a markup format for humans that is both readable and writable trivially in this raw format. In contrast to something like HTML, which is kind of difficult for humans to read, but in the browser produces human readable output. Markdown is particularly awesome because it retains all the benefits of plain text that we all know and love, such as being readable by any editor and human, not binary, and much like plain text, can be happily piped between programs by anything that supports regular text. But it also gains all the awesome benefits of like an HTML-like markup language, which is being able to express rich text and work nicely with the web browser, trivially. Because HTML alone is not enough. Oh, I just said this, yeah. But source legible is beta effort. Oh, that's my cue. Okay. I mean, to illustrate this point, I'm going to look at a README file, and this README file is in Markdown. So it's fairly readable, I'd say. Let's look at, so if we were to turn that README into HTML file. Okay, cool. So that's the HTML version. Thank God all of our READMEs are not written this way. Because if they were, then we couldn't actually read any of our documentation in the terminal. We need to open a browser window every time we wanted to actually read anything. So there are lots of formats that you could write in. Markdown isn't the only format that supports some of these nice properties, but Markdown is an open standard. It's not really a standard, I'll talk about why, but it's not owned by anyone except for the Markdown community, which is all of us. It was developed back in 2004, so it's had 11 years to grow and evolve, and it has a really loving community that's developed a lot of great tools for it across a lot of languages and a lot of IDs and editors. So the ecosystem is incredibly rich, and it's still actively used today. It's easily parsed, both by humans and machines, and can be output to HTML. I think someone's written like a PDF output. Oh, hi.
Hi, how old is Markdown?
The question was how old Markdown is. It was 2004
Ah.
was the first implementation, so 11 years. Markdown is easily editable by any editor at all, or IDE. If you work on the world of GitHub or Bitbucket, Markdown's sort of the lingua franca of the wikis and readmes, so if you've done any open source on GitHub, you probably already have used Markdown, whether you realize it or not. And at the minimum, at the very minimum, every editor in IDE has at least syntax highlighting for Markdown, so it looks pretty. So very briefly, John Gruber drafted the first draft on Markdown in 2004, and he wrote a implementation in Perl. And from that, 11 years, wow, so many flavors. GitHub, Pandoc, Markdown Extra, Common Mark. But still today there's no standard specification for Markdown. The original spec was written in kind of ambiguous terms. A lot of edge cases weren't talked about, weren't really considered. There's not really a standard test suite. So that's why we have all these varieties of Markdown. Some folks pushed for standard Markdown. Now it's called Common Mark, but it hasn't really picked up steam yet. So still in 2015, there's still no real standard of Markdown. I prefer the GitHub flavored Markdown, and there's a lot of modules, libraries for that, but it's still kind of a not awesome world yet. but it's used everywhere still. GitHub, Slack, Stack Overflow, Reddit, and like a million other places. You said it. So let's write a bit of Markdown. Just really quickly. Let's just kind of see what Markdown looks like. So. Text is plain text, so if I echo that and pipe it to Markdown, I get the same text in a paragraph tag. Cool. A cool thing about Markdown is that things tend to look like, in plain text, what they look like on the web. So if I say, hello, with like asterisks around it, I get bolded text in HTML. And if I use only one asterisk, I get italicized text. You can also use headings for like big titles, and that gives you H1, and you can sort of keep on applying these, get H2, H3, H4, going downward. If I were to open a actual file here, you can see that they use headers as well as subheaders. And this is all like very, very readable for me as a human. There's some weird new line stuff going on here, but for the most part, it's very readable. So links are expressed using a little less awesome syntax. You can see one right here, which involves having the name of the text that appears, geopackage, and then in renders as like this. You end up having like links. And yeah, code, images. Code is done inside the backticks, and this lets you put in like code, lines, words, symbols, and then which get translated into these nice little code blocks. And if you're using GitHub flavored Markdown, you can apply tags that will give it syntax highlighting for your favorite language as well. Yeah, that's a reasonably good demo. I'm satisfied with that. So I just talked about this. So MarkEd is a GitHub flavored Markdown renderer. It's written in Node. It's on npm. If you have an npm installed right now and you want to use it, you could type in npm install -g marked, and that will download it and make it an executable command that you can then use to render your own Markdown. I'm going to talk very briefly about using Markdown in Vim. There's not a lot to say just because it's really close to plain text, so there's not, I guess, a lot that's super important. So let's take this file here and open that. And ignore that. So we have this file. Actually, it's one that we were just looking at. So you can move between paragraphs using the curly braces, left and right curly braces. So as you can see, I'm kind of jumping around here between paragraphs. Unfortunately, there's no way built in to jump between useful things like, say, headings built into Vim, but there are plugins that allow this. One such plugin is Plastic Boy /Vim Markdown. Really, the only part of it I use is the ability to jump between headings. That's handy, but it does a lot of it tries to do a lot of things at once that maybe you don't also want. So, as far as I know, there's no Vim plugin that will give you some nice navigation yet, until you write it. You can shift text like bullet points left and right using the angle brackets. So if I had, well, there's nothing here, but if you had an important list, like this and this, oh, and don't forget this too. And I don't know, maybe you want to indent these. So then you can use the angle brackets to provide indentation. Maybe if you had sub items as well, you could like move them around like that. That's handy. And little O and big O let you open lines above and below. That might not be strictly Markdown related, but I can open a new line to insert below and big O to open above, which are some small things that are helpful when you're writing plain text like Markdown. By default, Vim's Markdown plugin doesn't actually recognize .md files, which is another alternate extension for Markdown. You can use .markdown or .md. It thinks you're writing code in modula 2. But you can use a line like this to tell Vim to treat it as a Markdown file. And like other small things, like I tend to use a width of 80 characters in Markdown files so that they render nicely in a terminal. Since it goes to HTML in the end, those new lines end up being eaten from the final HTML version. So there's no harm in having some extra new lines in the Markdown for readability. I was going to blab about why you should always use auto-command groups in Vim, but this may be straying too far out of scope for a talk about Markdown. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of Markdown tools that are really cool that can make Markdown more pleasant to use. One of them is called VMD. It's a Markdown viewer that takes Markdown on standard input or a Markdown file and will actually give you a nice window of the rendered Markdown. I think you might have seen me using it a minute ago. This window. I'm invoking that right now by hitting -V, but what's actually happening under the hood is oh god, where is that? This line here. So in the case for Vim where the file type is Markdown, it maps leader key V, leaders dash in my thing, and it just pipes the output to the VMD command. Looking at this on the command line might be easier. I could have, hey, some Markdown, which is in a header block, and pipe that into VMD and get, hey, some Markdown as title. So this is a sort of nice, when you're writing Markdown documents and you want to be able to quickly check what your document looks like without needing to like, I don't know, load it up in like sort of browser or like use some external tool. I guess it is an external tool, but VMD is really lightweight. It just does this one thing. So in the spirit of do one thing well, it lets you view Markdown trivially. This is also the case if, say, you're on the timeline and like you're in someone else's module. Like let's say I'm looking at Glog, and I'm in the terminal. I want to read the README, so I can type in VMD README and get any module's like README file. Strapdown, which is, it's kind of like the tool I just showed, except the idea is if you were to look at sort of the raw HTML output of converting a file from Markdown. So let's take that README I had here. That's the HTML. If I pipe that to some file and then view that in the browser. So the styling, the resulting styling of running the market command gives you this kind of very 1994 looking HTML. It's not all stylized. There's no CSS sheet attached to it, so it's pretty unpleasant on the eyes. What Strapdown does is it, in a very lightweight manner, by wrapping it with a little bit of HTML on the top and the bottom, and you can apply various themes that people have created. So you can really quickly create a nice, I don't know, maybe this for blog posts or for articles that you're posting online, as a nice way of applying a theme kind of ad hoc to some Markdown that you've written. And to apply this, what they have you do is a little manual. They want you to add this XMP markup to an HTML file, then write your markdown inside the HTML file and include their script, which does the conversion. But that's kind of unpleasant to do from the command line. So I have a script called strapdown that consumes when you view it, you have this very attractive stylized
wow.
markdown. And I think there's a lot of community contributed themes and stuff too. So that's sort of a cheap way of getting a little more bang for your buck with a markdown file. And T-Slide. That's actually the program I'm using right now to show these slides. So it consumes markdown files and gives you this nice slide format. So we can actually look at these slides right now. Oh hey, you may remember some of these lines. So it uses these three dashes to indicate the end of a slide. So if I were to actually run this, oh hey. So I think it's a cool example of a program that is really simple and does one thing, and also writing the software is trying to reuse existing standards and formats as much as possible. So if you have this markdown document, you can trivially reuse that and turn it into a presentation, for example. There's other libraries like this that will produce like an HTML presentation instead, and the terminal is a little too hairy for your liking. I have this line in my MRC that binds leader P to pipe the current buffer into T-Slide. You may have seen me quickly running this command, which lets me type leader P, and then whatever I typed in then goes to the presentation file. So this lets you really rapidly prototype the presentation you're working on, instead of needing to like drop out the terminal and typing in like T-Slide intro to Markdown. I'm already asleep. And, oh, well that's it. Gosh, that was fast. That's everything. It's over.
Cool.
Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, where can you install VMD?
Oh, it's, thanks for asking. It's on, it's a no module, it's on NPM. I can type in npm install. If I can type install, nope. VMD. And then that will make it a command, and you can just pipe that data to it. Same thing with T-Slide, and Strapdown is not, there's no module for that yet.
Cool.
Thanks everyone.
Cool.
Thank you.
How do I disconnect?
VMD is also a molecular visualization program.